Welcome back. This season of Myth Madness is on Persian mythology. In my opinion, the best source for Persian mythology is an epic poem composed in 1010 AD called the Shahnameh, or Book of Kings. It is truly a book about kings. It covers multiple generations of legendary Persian kings and tells stories about their lives and exploits, as well as a whole cast of heroic warriors who support them. Even though the Shahnameh was written after the Arab conquest of Persia, and during a time when most people in Persia were Muslim, the stories in the poem, as I've mentioned before, have elements that go back centuries, to a time when Zoroastrianism was Persia's dominant religion. So along the way, I've brought in material from ancient Zoroastrian religious texts to compare with what's in the Shahnameh. The first couple episodes of this season set the stage by covering what those texts said about the creation of the world and humans, and how that laid the foundation of an epic struggle between good and evil for control of the universe. The next episodes after that covered specific kings and what they did to fight against the forces of evil. However, there was a significant reversal when the greatest of these kings, a man named Jamshid, fell from grace. He grew complacent and arrogant and was deposed by a serpent-like man named Zahhak, who was influenced by the universal evil spirit Ahriman. I told how Zahhak was in turn deposed by a prophesized hero king named Fereydun, and then I spent a few episodes talking about a different Persian epic poem called the Shahnameh. Well, it's time to return to the Shahnameh and pick back up with the story of Fereydun. Since it's been a while, the first part of this episode will recap how Fereydun saved the world from Zahhak. Then after that, I'll tell about Fereydun's sons and the trouble that they got up to. Okay, so first, what does the Shahnameh have to say about Fereydun's defeat of Zahhak? After Zahhak seized power from Jamshid, he forced Jamshid's two sisters, Arnavaz and Shahnavaz, to enter his harem. He taught them dark magic and corrupted the two women to his evil ways. With the evil spirit Ahriman guiding him, Zahhak's reign was cruel. One of Zahhak's greatest crimes was ordering that every day the cooked brains of two young people be fed to the snakes that sprouted from his shoulders. But after many centuries of darkness, Zahhak dreamed of his destruction at the hands of a warrior wielding an ox-headed mace. Sages from across the land interpreted the dream as a prophecy. Another man was fated to take the throne. This man had not been born yet, and his mother was not even pregnant. Zahhak would cause the death of this man, Fereydun's father, and then the young man would desire vengeance because of it. Hearing this prophecy, Zahhak assembled his best and most loyal soldiers. He sent them out to search the world for signs of his coming enemy. But fear darkened Zahhak's days, and he did not eat or rest again. Time passed, and the prophesied Fereydun was born. It was clear from the beginning he was destined for greatness. The holy fire that once radiated from Jamshid now radiated from Fereydun. He had the blessing of the creator or Mazd. Meanwhile, a cow named Barmea was born at the same time as Fereydun. This cow was the most amazing cow of all cows. Every hair on her body was a different color. After Fereydun was born, his father Abtin learned that Zahhak's soldiers were after him. He attempted to escape, but Zahhak's men caught Abtin in a trap, tied him up like a captured cheetah, and brought him to Zahhak. The king ordered Abtin's execution. Abtin's wife and Fereydun's mother was Farenak. When her husband never returned home and she heard what happened to him, she knew it was only a matter of time before Zahhak found her too. Farenak quickly packed up what she could carry and took Fereydun into the countryside, to the meadow where the cow Barmea was kept. Farenak went to the owner of the cow and asked him to take her baby, act as his parents, and feed him with the milk of the colorful cow. The owner of the cow accepted and raised Fereydun as his own son for 3 years. But at that point, rumors of the fantastic cow reached Zahhak. Farenak learned her son was in danger and returned to the meadow. She took her son back, thanked the man, and said she would take the boy far away to the Alborz mountains to raise. It was not a moment too soon. Days later, Zahhak reached the meadow. He killed the cow Barmea and every animal he saw nearby. He then went to the farmhouse, found it abandoned, and burnt it to the ground. Meanwhile, Fereydun took Fereydun to the Alborz Mountains and found a hermit cut off from the rest of the world. She told the hermit about how Fereydun was fated to kill Zahhak and take the throne. She asked him to protect the boy and act like his father until he was a young man. The hermit accepted and took Fereydun to his lair high in the mountains. Now, why did Fereydun keep giving her son up? And where did she go while he was being raised by strangers? Well, she actually had 2 other sons, and while it's never mentioned, let's assume she went back to wherever they were to raise them to adulthood too. Years passed, and when Fereydun was 16, he descended the mountain and found his mother. He asked her to share the secrets of his life and tell him about his father and family. Fereydun replied that Fereydun was Iranian. His father was a man named Abtin and descended from the kings. He was a wise man and warrior. Fereydun told Fereydun that his father had sacrificed himself to save the boy from Zahhak, and how Fereydun was raised and fed milk from the wonderful cow Barmaya. She told him Zahhak killed his father and the cow. Hearing the story chilled Fereydun's heart and put him into a rage. He longed for vengeance and declared he would grab a sword and raise the dust of battle over Zahhak's palace. Fereydun sternly told him he was being a foolish child. She told him he had no followers, while Zahhak ruled the entire world and could summon an army of 100,000 warriors from every country with a single word. Revenge would come, but would require time and careful preparation. Back at Zahhak's palace, the existence of Fereydun and the inability of the army to destroy him put the evil tyrant into a terrible state of mind. One day, a man came into Zahhak's hall demanding justice. He introduced himself as Kaveh and said he was a blacksmith. Previously, Zahhak had ordered the death of 2 of Kaveh's sons, and their brains were fed to Zahhak's snakes. Kaveh had come to accuse the king himself of injustice. His sons ended up being returned to him, but after the commotion that followed the accusation, Kaveh turned around and left the palace. Out in the street, a large crowd gathered around him as he shouted his demands for justice. He took his leather blacksmith's apron and tied it to the tip of a long spear. More people rallied to this improvised flag, and Kaveh told them that they should join Fereydun to free themselves from Zahhak's chains, who by this time had apparently begun some kind of rebellion. Kaveh led the people to him. How does Kaveh know the location of Fereydun? It's not clear. However, another Iranian epic, the Shahnameh, which I've talked about before on the pod, says Kaveh served as one of Fereydun's generals. So let's assume that Kaveh knew where Fereydun was because he already had some link to the rebellion. With Kaveh's support, the rebellion's forces grew, and Fereydun saw that Zahhak's days were numbered. He prepared his army for a battle, but kept his plan secret. One day, Fereydun asked his 2 brothers to go into the market and bring back the best blacksmiths they could find. When they returned, Fereydun sat down in front of them and drew a picture of an ox-headed mace in the dust at their feet. "Build this," he told the blacksmiths, "and be rewarded." When they were done, Fereydun held the mace. He told them, "If I can lay Zahhak beneath the earth with this, I shall guide the world towards justice." Finally, the army set out. On the march, they came to a place where a number of religious devotees lived. Fereydun sent greetings to them, and a man came forward to welcome him. This man had a face like a beautiful woman, and hair that came down to his feet. Fereydun guessed that this holy man was not human, and was instead a divine being. He was right. The man was actually the angelic being Sorush in disguise, sent by the Creator to work against the evil forces of Ahriman and Zahhak. Sorush taught Fereydun magic, and after a nice meal together, Fereydun fell asleep. Fereydun's brothers were jealous of their younger brother, and decided to kill him. While Fereydun slept, they climbed a tall hill. They pushed a large boulder tumbling down the hillside in the direction of their sleeping brother. But the Creator's will would not be stopped. The sound of rocks falling woke up Fereydun, and he looked up to see the boulder coming his way. He used the spells taught to him by the holy man to stop the rock in its tracks. Afterwards, Fereydun woke up the army and resumed their march. He never said anything to his brothers about what had happened. Fereydun's army arrived at the Tigris River and made camp near the city of Baghdad. A ferryman was asked to carry the army across, but the man declined. He didn't have any boats, and Zahhak had ordered him to not let so much as a mosquito cross the river unless it was with a permit written with a secret sign. Angry, and without the ferryman's help, Fereydun ordered his men to mount their horses and have them carry them into the water. In this way, they got across the river and continued on to Jerusalem, where Zahhak had made his capital. When they saw the king of the world's palace with its walls that shined like the stars, Fereydun's heart fell. He feared that the king might somehow be secretly favored by fate. But instead of backing down, Fereydun pledged to attack immediately, while they still had the element of surprise. Fereydun pulled out his ox-headed mace and charged the army forward. When he entered Zahhak's palace, he found himself in front of a large idol. It honored a deity that was not the creator, so Fereydun knocked it down. He went through the palace, crushing the heads of the magicians and thieves who lived there, before arriving at Zahhak's great hall. The palace was secured. Fereydun ordered Zahhak's concubines be brought to him. Arnavaz and Shahnameh cowered at his feet. They feared for their lives, but Fereydun ordered their minds be purified. He taught the sisters of Jamshid the ways of righteousness, and they told him they had wretchedly passed their days suffering at Zahhak's hands, only cooperating with Zahhak because they feared for their lives. Arnavaz asked Fereydun what he thought it would be like to be married to a serpent. Finally, they told him Zahhak was not even there. The king had gone to India and was busy slaughtering innocent men and women so he could bathe in their blood and appease his snakes. The tyrant had left a man in charge in his absence. When this man, Khondro, walked into the hall and saw Fereydun sitting on the throne with Jamshid's sisters standing next to him, he slyly paused. He bowed before Fereydun and declared his allegiance. He organized a large feast for Fereydun, with music, wine, and dancing. The festivities went late into the night, but by the morning Khondro had saddled a horse and left the palace to warn Zahhak. When Khondro arrived in India, he told Zahhak how 3 brothers led an army into the palace. One carried an ox-headed mace, took the throne, and flung men and demons loyal to Zahhak off the wall. While the Shahnameh doesn't say this, let's imagine that Khondro found Zahhak lying quietly in his bloodbath of innocence, surrounded by candles, his snakes lulled to sleep with an ambient background music. Zahhak must have been very relaxed, because he was weirdly unfazed by Khondro's news. He told Khondro Fereydun was a guest, and that there was nothing wrong. Khondro replied, "Since when does a guest use a mace to destroy your sacred idols and convert your people to their own faith?" But again, Zahhak remained unbothered, putting all his attention on his yellow rubber ducky. He said Fereydun was a very demanding guest, and very demanding guests were actually good luck. Khondro tried one more time. "Since when does a guest go into your harem?" This man strokes Shahnameh's cheeks with one hand, while Arnavaz kisses the other, and at night he sleeps pillowed between both of these women. When Zahhak heard this, his relaxation finally broke. He fell out of the tub and onto the ground. He cursed his fate, and told Khondro he would never guard one of his castles again. To which Khondro replied, "My lord, if you don't act in your defense, I don't think you will ever see your throne or any of your castles again." Zahhak gathered an army of thieves. They went to Jerusalem and surrounded the city. To Zahhak's surprise, the people of Jerusalem joined Fereydun's army. The streets filled with swords, arrows, and dead bodies. But Zahhak's army was held off. So the evil king tried something else. He dressed himself from head to toe in iron armor, so he was unrecognizable, climbed the walls, and crawled over the roof of the palace alone. Not a smart idea. He came to a courtyard. Down below, he saw bright-cheeked Shahnameh sitting with Fereydun. He overheard them cursing the king. Him, angry and jealous, he pulled out his dagger, ready to stab his traitorous concubine. Zahhak held the dagger in his teeth and descended the walls. But when his feet touched the ground, he found Fereydun ready for him. The hero quickly came forward, swung his ox-headed mace, and brought it down right on top of Zahhak's head. The king's iron helmet shattered. He fell to the ground in a daze. But before Fereydun could deliver the killing blow, the divine messenger of the creator Ormazd, the angelic Sorush, appeared. He ordered Fereydun to stop and not strike the monstrous tyrant again. Instead, Zahhak should be bound and imprisoned on Mount Damavand until the end of time. Fereydun obeyed. While Zahhak was still unconscious, he gathered long strips of lion skin and bound Zahhak's arms and legs. Zahhak was flung on the back of a donkey and taken to the mountains. But when Fereydun reached his destination, he remembered how Zahhak had killed his father, killed the cow Barmea, and filled the land with deeves and human suffering. Fereydun filled with rage. He looked at Zahhak's snakes and wondered how such a monster could be left alive. He lifted his mace to kill Zahhak, but again Sorush appeared and stopped him. He told Fereydun that Zahhak could not be killed. If he died, all the vileness and evil that was inside of him would leave his body and seep into the world. Instead, Sorush led Fereydun to a mountain cave. Zahhak was tied with heavy chains. Long nails were pounded through his body, but not through his corruption-filled organs, and into the rocks of the mountain. Zahhak would suffer, imprisoned, until the end of the world. Fereydun left Mount Damavand and took over Zahhak's throne. With the oppressive rule of Zahhak over, Fereydun ushered in a golden age. Old quarrels were ended. Nobles sat together and drank. A new festival was established to celebrate feasting and relaxation. Fereydun ruled for 500 years, and while he was king, the world was free from evil. When Fereydun's mother, Ferenak, heard her son had successfully defeated Zahhak and was now king of the world, she washed and prayed. Then she began to slowly give away some of her riches to the poor. Finally, she held a big celebration and ordered all of her remaining wealth, clothes, jewels, horses, armor, and weapons loaded onto camels and sent to her son. So that's Fereydun in the Shahnameh. But what about in the earlier Zoroastrian literature? Fereydun is present in the Avesta, the faith's most ancient texts. In the Avesta, he is called Thre-Teona. He is helped by the gods, similar to the Shahnameh's Fereydun, and he saves two women named Sangavachi and Arnavachi from the monster Az-Dahaka. These two women are earlier versions of Jamshid's sisters, Sharnavaz and Arnavaz. Az-Dahaka, or Azi-Dahak, is an earlier version of Zahhak. In the Avesta, Thre-Teona asks the gods to grant him the power to defeat Az-Dahaka, and overpowering the three-headed, six-eyed serpent monster is his greatest accomplishment. However, we have to look to the later Denkard and Bundahishni, two Zoroastrian texts written around the 8th century AD, to understand how the earlier Zoroastrians thought Thre-Teona accomplished this task. These texts say the hero smacked Az-Dahaka on the shoulder, heart, and skull with his club, but didn't kill the monster because the creator, Ahura Mazda, or Ormazd, warned him nasty creatures would be born from its corpse. So, like in the Shahnameh, Az-Dahaka was imprisoned. However, at the end of the world, we're told that he will break free from his chains and devour 1/3 of all humans, oxen, and sheep before being killed by a reborn hero. The Denkard also directly links this version of Fereydun to the king Jamshid. The text says that 10 generations separate them, with each of the people in the middle living for 100 years. Okay, so now let's turn back to the Shahnameh and see what Fereydun did once he was the new king of the world and looking to establish his own dynasty. Fereydun married the two rescued women, Sharnavaz and Arnavaz, and they became the mothers of Fereydun's sons. Sharnavaz gave birth to 2 sons, and Arnavaz gave birth to another son. All 3 sons would be tall and strong like their father. When they grew up, Fereydun asked his advisor Jandal to tour the world and find 3 princesses, 3 sisters, who were worthy to marry his 3 sons. So Jandal got to work. He quickly ruled out any of the noble families in Persia. Then he went abroad and traveled to Yemen. Jandal was welcomed by Yemen's king Sarv. Jandal explained the purpose of his visit. He told Sarv he knew of his 3 noble daughters and that Fereydun wanted them to marry his sons. Sarv was saddened to hear this. He did not want his daughters to leave their home and live far away, but he couldn't openly say this. Fereydun was a powerful king of the world after all. Instead, Sarv decided to delay. He told Jandal he needed to consult his advisors and had living quarters prepared for Jandal to stay while he waited. The advisors told Sarv that if he approved of the marriage, he should welcome Fereydun's sons and be done with it. But if he didn't, and was scared of Fereydun's reaction, he should agree but give conditions that would be impossible to fulfill. Sarv summoned Jandal and told him that Fereydun's request was hard for him to agree to, that it would have been easier if Fereydun had asked for the entire kingdom of Yemen, or even Sarv's own eyes. But he told Jandal that if Fereydun's 3 sons traveled to Yemen and honored Sarv with a visit, he would allow them to take his daughters back with them. Jandal was pleased to hear this. He praised Sarv, returned to Iran, and told Fereydun what Sarv had said. Fereydun summoned his sons and told them about the 3 Yemeni princesses he had arranged for them to marry. He told them the king of Yemen was an excellent warrior and also a very clever man. He instructed his sons on how to properly behave on their journey, and he also told them that Sarv would try and trick them. Fereydun told his sons Sarv would seat his 3 daughters on 3 magnificent thrones, the youngest in front, the oldest at the back, and the middle in between. Sarv would sit the 3 brothers opposite the 3 princesses, but would seat them in the opposite order. The 3 brothers would then be asked to tell who was who. After hearing their father's instructions, the 3 brothers set off for Yemen. Sarv welcomed them when they arrived. He scattered jewels and musk at their feet and introduced them to his 3 daughters. He sat them as Fereydun had predicted, and asked the brothers to say which princess was the youngest and which was the oldest, just as Fereydun had predicted. The 3 brothers followed their father's advice and answered correctly. Sarv realized his trick had failed, and his 3 daughters blushed at their father's very strange, bizarre behavior. At night, the 3 brothers were taken to their beds in the rose garden in the palace courtyard. After Sarv left them, he went and performed magic spells, raising a terrible cold wind, and hoping the brothers would die from the exposure. The garden grounds froze, but the 3 brothers were also skilled in magic. They used their own spells and prayers to keep warm and survive the night. In the morning, when Sarv entered the garden, he expected to see 3 frozen corpses. Instead, he found the 3 brothers sitting there unharmed. He knew his tricks had failed, and promptly gave up. Sarv led them to his secret treasury. He loaded his daughters with all kinds of gold, jewels, and other treasures, and then sent them on camels with Fereydun's sons back to Iran. The way back was eventful. King Fereydun decided to test his sons. To do so, he used magic to transform himself into a huge dragon, and then went to lie in the desert waiting for his sons to pass by. First, Dragon Fereydun attacked the oldest son. The boy knew it was not wise to fight a dragon, and fled. Next, Dragon Fereydun attacked the second son. This boy stood his ground and shot arrows from his bow. The dragon disappeared, and the second son continued on his way. Finally, Dragon Fereydun attacked the youngest son. The boy simply strode forward and addressed the dragon. He told the beast he was a son of Fereydun and demanded it step aside in the name of the king. When all 3 returned to Iran, Fereydun revealed that he had been the dragon and wanted to test the bravery of his sons. He bestowed on each of the 3 brothers a new name. To the oldest, he said, "You will be called Salm. When the dragon appeared, you retreated and sought safety." The word for safety in Persian is salamat. To the second son, he said, "You will be called Tur. The dragon's flame brought out your bravery." To the youngest son, he said, "You showed dignity and fierceness, and chose a middle way like an intelligent man. You will be called Iraj." Fereydun then renamed the 3 princesses too. He named Salm's wife Arzu, meaning desire. He called Tur's wife Mahe Azadeh Kui, which means a free-spirited moon. And he called Iraj's wife Sahi, meaning tall and slender. After that, Fereydun had numerous astrologers and oracles brought in to read his 3 sons' fortunes. Their horoscopes were terrible and showed that their lives would be filled with strife and suffering. Perhaps that should have been a warning to Fereydun, but then he went on to reveal a plan he was secretly working on. Fereydun ruled the whole world, yet had decided to divide his realm into three. One part, Rum, the west, was given to Salm. Fereydun's oldest son was ordered to gather an army, go west, and serve as lord of the western lands. The second part, the lands to the east of Persia where the Turks and Chinese lived, were given to Tur. He also gathered an army and set out for his new domain, Turan. Finally, Fereydun turned to his youngest son, Iraj. He gave Iraj his crown, sword, seal, and ivory throne. He made Iraj the ruler of Persia and also Arabia. Time passed and Fereydun grew old. As he weakened with age, his sons grew stronger. In the west, Salm was overcome by greed. He coveted the throne of Persia and plotted with his advisors over how he could take it from his brother Iraj. Salm sent a message to his brother Tur. The letter said all three brothers were worthy to rule, but questioned why Iraj had received the throne of Persia. Salm was the oldest and should have been favored first, and if their father decided to pass him over, the throne should have went to Tur before Iraj. This message was music to Tur's ears. His own message reminded Salm that their father had tricked them, and in so doing had planted a tree with poisonous fruit and blood for sap. The two brothers decided to meet. They agreed to send a messenger to Fereydun. They told the messenger to tell the king the Creator had granted him 3 sons, but he had chosen to favor one of them and despise the other 2. Salm and Tur believed that they deserved the crown, and that Fereydun should pull the Persian crown from Iraj's head and send him somewhere else to rule. If Fereydun did not listen to this demand, and a demand it was, Salm and Tur would gather the armies of China, Turan, and the West, and devastate Persia with them. The messenger departed, and reluctantly arrived at Fereydun's palace and gave the king of the world his 2 sons' evil message. Fereydun was angry, but not surprised. He had suspected his son's treachery. Fereydun gave the man his own message to take back to Salm and Tur. First, he said their minds had been tainted by the evil spirit Ahriman, and that they were fools without any wisdom to know better. He said he had spent a long time properly dividing the world among his 3 sons, and he asked them if they thought the Creator would look kindly on the evil things they planned to do. When the messenger departed, Fereydun summoned Iraj and told him what had happened. Fereydun told Iraj his brothers were no longer his brothers, and they were leading armies to take Persia away from him. Iraj told his father he would do no evil, and that the crown and throne meant nothing to him. He said he would go and visit his brothers. He would remind them what happened to Jamshid, how he had ruled the whole world alone until hubris ended everything. He would kindly warn them that they might meet Jamshid's fate too. Fereydun was pleased to be reminded of his youngest son's noble nature, but he warned Iraj that if a man put his head in a dragon's jaws, surely he would meet his demise, since it was a dragon's nature to eat him. Fereydun warned Iraj that if he actually planned to do this, he should take some companions with him, and Fereydun would write another letter to Salm and Tur, hoping to see their brother return unharmed. So before Iraj set out, Fereydun composed another letter. In it, he humbly told Salm and Tur he no longer wished to wear the crown. His only desire was to ensure the well-being of all 3 of his sons. He told them that Iraj preferred his love for them over his own sovereignty, and was on his way to meet with them. Fereydun asked Salm and Tur to treat their brother well, allow him to stay with them for a few days, and then send Iraj back to Fereydun. So Iraj arrived at Salm and Tur's army camp. They greeted him and paraded their combined armies in front of him. Yet the armies of East and West saw Iraj and were struck by his nobility and royal grace. The soldiers began to whisper that Iraj, and not Salm or Tur, should be a king of the whole world, undivided, and not shared with anyone else. Salm saw how the soldiers behaved and was disturbed. Filled with rage, he cleared his tent of counselors and spoke to Tur alone. He told his brother what he had seen and heard. He told Tur that if they did not act now, the soldiers would drag them both from their thrones. All night they talked and schemed and decided what they would do next. In the morning, Salm and Tur made their way to Iraj's tent. Their youngest brother saw them approach and ran out to welcome them. Once in the tent, Tur told Iraj he was younger than them, and said he would not allow Iraj to remain the king of Persia. Iraj responded that he did not want Persia. He had sat on the throne and was tired of it. He said he did not want to fight his brother, would happily give Tur the throne, and be content to simply be a subject. But Tur was annoyed by his brother's righteous words. He leapt up, grabbed the chair he had been sitting on, and smashed it down on Iraj's head. Iraj lay dazed on the ground and begged for mercy. He warned his brother not to kill him, that blood would be on Tur's hands, and the Creator would never forgive him. But Tur said nothing. He pulled a poisoned dagger from his boot and buried it in Iraj's chest. Then he slashed Iraj from head to tail, spilling blood all over the tent. But that wasn't the end of Tur's despicable actions. He next cut off his brother's head, put it in a box, and sent it back to Fereydun with the message, "Here is your beloved son. You can give him the crown now, but he won't need it." Iraj's body was fed to ravenous lions. Back in Persia, Fereydun prepared a turquoise throne for the coming of Iraj. Wine was poured, musicians were made ready, and the whole city was decorated. In the distance, a cloud of dust appeared over the road, and soon a camel arrived, driven by a wailing messenger and carrying a coffin. Fereydun's men removed the coffin and opened the lid to reveal Iraj's severed head. The welcoming party turned into a funeral. Everything was draped in black cloth, and crying filled the air instead of sweet music. In despair, Fereydun took Iraj's head to his son's favorite garden. He burned the garden down and clawed at his hair. He called on the Creator for justice and cursed Iraj's brothers. He asked for more time to be added to his already long life, to ensure that a descendant of Iraj would be a vehicle for vengeance. But that's a story for another episode. If you enjoyed this podcast, please get the word out and share it with a friend. You can also provide a review on any of your podcast streaming platforms. As always, thank you for listening.